Alright, hello everybody, welcome to our next lesson here, Conflict in Africa. So our objectives and standards to identify the conflict between African people and Europeans and analyze the results of the conflicts between African people and European powers, and take a moment there to read over the standards, please. Desired result, how did imperialism work in Africa? So the Zulu, around 1816, excuse me, there was a Zulu chief who trained disciplined warriors and used military organization to create a strong central state. In 1879, British forces invaded the Zulu nation when they refused their rule. The Zulus were actually armed with only shields and spears, but almost defeated the British forces. Ultimately, the British were able to conquer the Zulu kingdom. However, my point here is that even though it seems like these African powers have, a lot of control, or I'm sorry, European powers have a lot of control and technology, sometimes that didn't always lead to their success in the in imperialism in Africa. The Boers and the British. Now, the Dutch had settled in South Africa in the middle of the 1600s. They were known as the Boers, which means farmers in Dutch. In the early 1800s, the British and the Boers clashed over land and slaves, so to escape these problems, the Boers decided to move north. Between the 1860s and the 1880s, gold and diamonds were discovered in southern Africa. The Boers attempted to keep other European nations from gaining rights in the area. In 1899, the Boers actually took up the fight against the British, and the Boer War used many military tactics that are common today, such as guerrilla warfare, like hiding among the bushes and hiding among buildings and things like that. Guerrilla warfare, and also launched raids against the British. The British, in turn, burned Boer farms, and they actually imprisoned women and children in these disease-filled camps. It killed a lot of people, and eventually the British actually won the war. Now, we said since in Africa, remember we said that, it's not going to come as easy to some groups to fight the Africans. So across the continent, Africans are going to resist against European rule in any way that they could. Africans, however, like we said, were at a strong disadvantage, though, due to European advances in weapons and technology. However, Africans were still able to shock and surprise many Europeans with their strength. Now, there's going to be some unsuccessful attempts. In Algeria, Africans are going to resist against the French for almost 50 years before they were finally weakened by famine. Also, in East Africa, Germans faced a religious rebellion known as the Mahi Mahi Rebellion, or Maji Maji Rebellion. During this religious rebellion, though, the Germans soon realized that maybe they did need to make some changes to help rule the Africans. So afterwards, German officials began implementing reforms for Africans. And there's going to be some success in Ethiopia as well. Menelik II was emperor of Ethiopia, his picture's right there, in the late 1800s. He was able to convince European powers to fight against each other while building a weapon stockpile. He actually went to war against Italy in 1896 and won. And because of this, Menelik II was able to defend Ethiopia against any European threat. Now, there are some negatives and positives to imperialism. One of them being Africans lost control of their land and independence. Obviously, this is a negative result, and many died of new diseases that Europeans brought over with them. Violence and death, of course, from resistance and rebellion, obviously for both sides, Europeans and Africans. And famines From change in agricultural products. Many African nations are going to see their kind of economy and agricultural ways change, to benefit the Europeans, but they don't benefit the Africans. And also the division of African territory, which, regardless of cultural groups and boundaries, created many wars and many problems that we can still see in Africa today, because groups that may not have gotten along were thrown together in a country, or groups that did get along were broken up and separated, and that kind of broke up their whole unity and system of government. So the Europeans really didn't think too far ahead when planning this. Now, there were some positives to imperialism. There is a reduction in local warfare. Sometimes European nations brought with them improved health and sanitation. Economic growth started to grow for some countries. Again, didn't really help all of them, but for some African groups, they'll see their economic growth grow due to their ships being their goods being shipped abroad, and also transportation improvements such as roads and railroads and things like that are also going to improve things. So our closure, how did imperialism work in Africa? Think about some of the things that happen in Africa in terms of imperialism. Think about good and bad, pros and cons of imperialism in Africa, and that'll help you answer your question. All right, so I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening, and I'll talk to you soon.